All right, so today, I guess, I'm not here today because I'm down at the volleyball state tournament. Hopefully, when I get back on Thursday, I'll have good news, or at least maybe I won't be here on Thursday, but when I see you guys on Friday, I'll have good news because we hopefully, okay, will have won the state tournament. Okay, so everybody cross your fingers. That's what you hear from me on Friday. Um, in the meantime, you should have already taken the quiz that had not just the kites, but the parallelograms and the trapezoids on them. That was a little half sheet. If you haven't done so, ask the substitute for this little half sheet that has all the pictures on it, and take that thing and give it to the substitute. Okay, just to review the rules of kites. Remember the kites, the diagonals are perpendicular, non-vertex angles are equal. Vertex diagonal bisects the vertex angles, okay, and the vertex, non-vertex diagonal is bisected. Okay, we also learned that in a parallelogram, opposite sides are equal, opposite angles are equal. The diagonals, both diagonals bisect each other, and then consecutive angles in a parallelogram, okay, these, remember you can put the little wings in there, but those consecutive angles are supplementary. Okay, what we're going to learn today is we're going to learn some additional rhombus rules. Okay, and then, okay, also do a little bit more that's going to be on rectangles and squares. Okay, right now, the rhombuses. Okay, just so you guys know, everything that I have talked about, okay, right over here, everything that I have said, okay, for a parallelogram, these things right here will work for the rhombus. Okay, however, there is going to be two additional rules that work for rhombuses, but do not work for these parallelograms. So in other words, in a parallelogram, opposite sides, they are going to be equal. But in fact, since it's a rhombus, by definition, just so you guys know, a rhombus, okay, has to have all sides that are equal. Okay, I think back in middle school you might have called it a diamond. Okay, if you turn that on the other way. Okay, however, if I come up here and I was to draw my diagonals in a rhombus, these two diagonals not only bisect each other, so yes, this right here is going to be equal to this, and yes, this right here is going to be equal to this right here. But there is one more thing that is true about a rhombus that's not true right over here about a parallelogram. In a parallelogram, you can see these angles right here, they are not going to be 90 degrees. But when we make a rhombus, okay, this little shape right here, that is always going to be perpendicular. So this is very similar to the kite where the diagonals are perpendicular, and a rhombus is kind of a kite and a parallelogram mixed together. Okay, so the diagonals are going to be perpendicular. That's one other one. And then one additional one that you're going to have is if I draw this diagonal in right up here, okay, this diagonal is going to cut this angle right here in half on both the top and the bottom. This is very similar, okay, to what we did right here on a kite. The kite, it bisected what we called the vertex angles. Okay, but, okay, it does not, notice this angle right here is not the same as that angle right there. So additionally, the one more thing that we have to do right here is it doesn't happen just to this diagonal, okay, but it also is going to happen, okay, to this other diagonal. Okay, so I can come over here and say, well, this one's going to have a different measure than this one, but this angle right here, okay, is going to be cut in half, okay, just like the other side. So these are two additional rules, okay, that you're going to have about parallelograms. Okay, not just parallelograms, but this has to be for a rhombus. And for a rhombus, it has to have all equal sides to be a rhombus. Notice in a parallelogram, these opposite sides are just equal, not all four sides equal. And when all four sides are equal, okay, this diagonal right here will be 90 if it's a rhombus. But if it's not a rhombus, notice that's not 90. And notice it will not bisect this angle either if it's not a rhombus. So those are two additional ones. Go ahead and draw these pictures down on your notes because I'll take your notes in for a grade when we come back. Okay, there's also Okay, a couple more that I have, okay, okay, you should have already taken, okay, your mid-seg quizzes as is. If you haven't, go into Google Classroom, and there's a link in Google Classroom for you to take that mid-segment quiz. Okay, when I come back, this is the quiz will look very similar to this. It'll have all the rules for kites, parallelograms, then I'll have two more rhombuses on there. Okay, and then there'll be two rectangles. Okay, a rectangle. Okay, first of all, a rectangle, okay, is going to have all 90-degree angles. Okay, so that's the one thing we do know about a rectangle. I think you already knew that. Okay, but one additional thing that we also know about a rectangle, okay, is that this diagonal right here and this diagonal right here, they are the same length. This is kind of like the isosceles trapezoid rule. Okay, remember when we did that one and we said the diagonals of an isosceles trapezoid were equal? Well, in a rectangle, both diagonals are going to have the same measurement. We have one more rule right here that's going to be for a square. Okay, and for a square, all the rules, okay, that we had for a rhombus, okay, remember for a rhombus, okay, we said that, okay, the diagonals were perpendicular and the diagonals bisected the angles. Okay, so we're going to come up here and we're going to add in all the square rules. Okay, now a square is a rhombus, so we automatically, okay, are going to say that a square has all sides are going to equal because it is a rhombus. But a square is a little bit more special than this rhombus. Okay, a rhombus right here doesn't have to have 90-degree angles. Well, a square, okay, is going to have 90-degree angles. Okay, so a square is going to have all equal sides and, okay, 90-degree angles. Okay, now, that's just the definition of a square. Okay, the things that we're going to add to this, okay, right up here is, okay, we're going to know that, okay, the diagonals, okay, of a square, because a square is a rhombus, the diagonals right here are going to bisect each other. But since a square is also a rectangle and these diagonals right here have to be the same, okay, a square is going to have both of these diagonals right here are going to be the same length. And since the diagonals are the same length and they bisect each other, because we know that in a parallelogram, okay, remember from the beginning right over here when we did a parallelogram, the diagonals bisect each other. Well, a rhombus, okay, or a square is a rhombus, which is a parallelogram, so it is going to bisect each one of the diagonals. Okay, additionally, with these diagonals right here, when you draw them in, it looks a lot better when I use the line tool. Okay, these diagonals, because a square is a rhombus, these diagonals are also, okay, going to be 90 degrees. So we did that run right back here on the on the rhombus rule when we did right here. They had 90 degrees, and a square is a rhombus, so it's going to have 90 degrees. And it's also, since a square is a rhombus, it's also going to bisect the angles. So I should be able to come right back up here and add that one in there. If I add together this diagonal right here, it's going to bisect, okay, this angle right here. But since we know it's 90 degrees and it's bisected, okay, we know this is going to be 45. Okay, this is going to be, okay, 45. Okay, this one right down here is going to be 45 because opposite angles, all angles are 90 degrees. Okay, so both of those are 45. The same thing's going to be true going in this direction right here. Make sure you guys are writing all these things down. Okay, the diagonals bisect each other. Okay, the diagonals are perpendicular to each other. The diagonals bisect the angles, okay, of a square. Okay, and I need to make sure I put in there also, okay, not just those are 45 degrees, okay, but, okay, these angles, I guess that's one way to cheat. Okay, these right over here are also 45 degrees going in that direction right there. Okay, the one thing I think I forgot is I kind of put two of them in the same square right here. We know that a square is a rhombus, so how I get 5 of them right here is I'm going to put all angles are 90 degrees. Okay, we know all sides are equal. We know the diagonals bisect each other. We know the diagonals are perpendicular to each other, and we know the diagonals bisect the angles. Okay, so reviewing all the rules that we've had here so far today. Okay, and this is everything that you're going to need to know. Okay, you have 4 rules of a kite, and you have, okay, 4 rules of a parallelogram. The 4 rules of a kite: diagonals are perpendicular, non-vertex angles equal, vertex angles bisected, and non-vertex angle diagonal is bisected. In a parallelogram, opposite sides equal, opposite angles equal, consecutive angles are supplementary, diagonals bisect each other. Then we got special. We went to a rhombus. A rhombus was an equilateral parallelogram. So it had this rule right here, but instead of these not being the same right there, a rhombus has all sides that are going to be equal. And when that happens in a rhombus, this special parallelogram ends up having the diagonals so they're perpendicular. Notice right over here, those diagonals are not perpendicular. You can tell that's 990. Okay, if it's just a parallelogram. Okay, but when we make it a rhombus, they end up being 90. And more specifically, they not only, okay, end up making 90 degrees here, but they end up cutting the angles, okay, that the diagonals intersect in half. And that doesn't happen in a parallelogram. Okay, even though a rhombus is a parallelogram, okay, these angles are not equal. I didn't do the best of pictures here. Okay, but you can see me come up here, and if I drew my segment in like this right here, you can tell that angle right there is not the same as that one. Okay, I draw a straight line right here. You can tell that angle right there is not the same as that one. Okay, so you can tell that's true, but when you make all the sides equal, it does come out to be true. And then more specifically, we had 2 other ones. We had a rectangle, which has to have all 90-degree angles. Obviously, the opposite sides, okay, are going to be equal right here. So I can obviously say this side and this side are equal because this side and this side, this is a parallelogram. The rectangle rules, all the rules for a parallelogram work for a rectangle because a rectangle is a special parallelogram. What do I mean by special? It has 90-degree angles. Parallelograms don't have to have 90-degree angles. This is pretty bad right here, but that was right there a parallelogram. These are supposed to be parallel sides there. I'd probably make one better, okay, using this little tool right here, okay, where I'm trying to get opposite sides parallel to one another. But more specifically, the rectangle, okay, is going to have diagonals so that they are going to equal each other. Okay, you can tell in this picture right here, this diagonal right here in a parallelogram is not the same length as that diagonal, okay, right there. Okay, you can tell that if I did that right there and I rotated that around, okay, it would not be the same. And lastly, a square. A square is a rectangle, so all sides are equal, opposite sides, but all sides are equal. It's a rectangle, so all angles are 90. It's a rhombus, so the diagonals bisect each other. It's a rhombus, a square is a rhombus, so the diagonals are perpendicular. And it's a parallelogram, so the diagonals bisect the angles. When we come back on, for you guys, it'll be Friday. This is what your quiz will look like. It'll have 4 kites on it. It'll have 4 parallelograms. It will have 2 rectangles. It will have 2 rhombuses, and then I'll tell you to put all the rules for a square all in one picture right now. Okay. In fact, okay, if you have time left in the period right now, why don't you get out a blank sheet of paper and do this quiz? Okay. You can go back and rewind. Okay. Do the 4 kite rules. Do the 4 parallelogram rules. Do the 2 rectangle rules, the 2 rhombus rules, and see how many of the square rules you can put in here without using your notes. Hope you have a good day, and hopefully I can say bring you back a state title.